if you have 3 plus question mark equals 5, it's always going to be 2. So Munz used the optic formula that is widely used in photography to determine that the subject that you see in that film, that close to frame 353, that the photographer, videographer, filmographer, Roger Patterson, was approximately 100 feet from the subject matter, where they call it the look-back sequence. And at about that distance right there, using that optical formula, that subject is roughly 7'3", and there's a plus and minus variance as to, okay, it might be an inch taller, inch shorter, etc., but it's got to be locked into that height. And Bob Hieronymus does not even approximate that height. And just backing up a minute, in May of 2009 in Yakima, they had the Bigfoot Roundup in honor of Bob Gimlin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up to be part of that event. And also, when I was up there, I said, well, I've been to Yakima a couple of times, but I said, most people know my personality, that I would maybe not challenge, but I said I was curious enough to find out exactly how tall Bob Hieronymus was. So I'm 5'7" tall. So I went to his home, knocked on the door, and out emerges from the side door was Bob Hieronymus, and he was at best maybe 5'10", at best. Now, this is an older individual, and say like maybe in 1967,
he stood up a little.
Maybe he was 6 feet tall,
yeah.
But he was not the 7'3" tall that was required to be in that epic movie.
And clearly, this creature was walking with the strength of its feet, so it wouldn't be like it was on little risers or anything like that.
No, all that business about arm extensions and about wearing slippers and having pillows in the buttocks, it's just like when you start to really look at that film on a frame-by-frame basis and the careful scrutiny that Bill Munz and Dr. Jeff Meldrum have done, it's just like you're seeing something that is very unique in the sense that it appears that everything is what you see is what you get. You're really seeing a foot there. You're really seeing a hand there. You're really seeing a fleshy, massive buttocks from the behind and not a pillow in a costume. Because the pillow in the costume and everything else, it would be very discernible in a costume. And when you look at that piece of film, and it's just like that subject matter does not have the look and feel of a costume, because a costume, if anything, would conceal rather than reveal the muscle masses that you see moving in the movie film.
What's going on with any potential DNA work, Danny?
I guess David Paulides and I want to say the NABS, North American Bigfoot Society or whatever, is they're trying to get this DNA analyzed to be unique and different than modern man, and it's just like, stop right there. It's just like if you back up to the late Eric Beckjord, who collected blood samples from the Lummi Indian Reservation from the mid-1970s, he was actually one of the first people to start a line of thinking along the ways of trying to have some DNA blood analyzed, and he actually was somewhat scientific about it at that time, hoping that you could do this type of study and come up with results that are unique and different than Homo sapiens. And it's just like back then he was not conclusive in any of his findings, so I suspect that any findings that they produce from 2011 even forward is again going to come back inconclusive or different than modern man, like hair samples that have been analyzed. But it's just like it's not going to resonate with the scientific community in North America because the DNA sample is going to say like, and they said, well, you can't fake this, you can't fake this. And the late Grover Krantz, when they had in 1982, when there was a major or semi-major press conference with regard to the ISC, the International Society of Cryptozoology,
right,
and the dermal ridges that were found on some plaster castings that were associated with Paul Freeman, Krantz said something to the effect that even if these plaster castings were found in a New York garbage dump, that it would be impossible to fake these dermal ridges. And it's just, there again is a matter where it's just like, it didn't hit home, it did not resonate with the scientific community. They didn't all say like, oh my gosh, he's right. And it's just like, we should go jump on the bandwagon. And it's just like, it was just another event that just quietly went away. So with regard to any DNA stuff, it's just like, and the stuff that was also collected, I guess, from the Monster Quest episodes, I guess, they did some stuff like that, collected from an area in Canada. I can't think of the name. But there again, it's just like, even though you might be coming up with stuff that might be unique or different than modern man, it's just like, it's not a defining piece of evidence in the sense that people are saying, oh my gosh, this is it, we told you so. It's just like, it seems that what it's going to take is the carcass of a body.
All right, stay with us, Daniel. We're going to take phone calls and continue our discussion to get some more of the great stories you've got on Coast to Coast AM. Daniel, outside of the Patterson Gimlin film, what case do you see as one of the best?
Oh, the one that happened November 17th of 2005, that was also the photos of the subject that was up on Silver Star Mountain was on your website then, Coast to Coast. And that was the matter of Randy Chase. And when that happened, I saw the BFRO website, and I guess those photos were shown on several websites or a couple of websites, and I was immediately impressed by the images. So without even trying to get a hold of the witness, by 2006, I had driven up to Silver Star Mountain from the north side and came in I said, well, I'll figure out where Silver Star Mountain is and just go and have a look for myself. And that whole area is very impressive. It's prime Bigfoot country. And so when I got back home, I didn't meet the witness at the time. I didn't find the correct location at the time. And then by, I guess, Christmas of 2008, somewhere around there, Cliff Barackman was at my home, who's a well-known Bigfoot investigator from Washington State, had stopped by. And he was in my home office, and we were just chatting about things, about certain cases, talking about stuff, Bigfoot-wise. And I said, well, it sure would be interesting to know who RC was that's mentioned on the BFRO website. And for those people who don't know, BFRO means Bigfoot Field Research Organization, Field Researchers Organization. RC was the initials for Randy Chase from Washington State. And so that's what Cliff told me, and I said, do you have his contact information, because I want to interview him. And so unlike a lot of what I would call drag-and-paste Bigfoot investigators that only do their work via the Internet and a website, it's just like I do get out in the field and I do interview people. And so when Randy consented to be interviewed by me, I phoned him and I said, well, I want to ask you about these photos, blah, blah, blah. What were you doing up there? And he said it was a hike up in this country and something that he did often, and that when he made this hike, November 17th of 2005, he had asked a friend of his to go up, and the temperatures, the weather conditions were absolutely frigid, I think in the early 30s. And so he gets up to the summit of this area, and he's something that he had hiked before in different types of conditions in the summer, etc.
So very familiar with the area.
Right, and so he says he gets up there and he sees this big rock that was out of place, and it starts to move. And so his first reaction, he has now this is in 2005, but even then he had, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess a 3.2 megapixel camera, which even then was a kind of a dated type of digital camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's still a very functional camera. And so he pulls this out of his day pack and takes, correct me if I'm wrong again, but two shots of the subject that show motion. And then the third shot, and I had to ask him about this, is of the Columbia River. And I said, I can't imagine that in the heat of the moment that, you're taking your eye off the ball to just take a shot of the Columbia River and not keeping your eye on the ball, the subject that's moving, that you have no idea what it is. And then the third shot of the thing parting away. So it's subject, Columbia River, then the subject again. And when you blow, I think it's either 1 or 2, when you blow up the digital image very big, you see the profile of the subject, which looks remarkably like a silverback, a gorilla in profile. And it's just like, so when I was up there in May of 2009 in Yakima, I had arranged immediately after the Yakima event to go see Randy Chase, and I said, would you be willing to go up to the mountain to show me where everything took place? And so one of my first experiments, and he agreed to do that, so we made a hike up there. And so one of my first orders of business was to see, like, at that distance, which was one of the arguments that it was just some guy hiking up the mountain from the opposite side who was just all dressed in black, like a skier or whatever, but all black clothing. And so I had Randy Chase as my test subject, and I put him where the subject was seen, and I was standing more